Time to rise and grind on a Wednesday morning edition of the Early Line. And oh, what a night it was in Major League Baseball, in the NHL, in the NBA, because the playoffs are back in our lives here. Teams are winning and moving on. Teams are losing and are being knocked out. Let's get it started today. And you know what? It's Donnie Rightside today. Typically it's Ben Stevens, but he is enjoying a nice week-long break on vacation. You know, it's filling up. It's Davis Maddock. He's ready to go on a Wednesday morning. Davis, how are we feeling today?
We are feeling great. We did get to see the Los Angeles Lakers win their play-in game.
Whoa.
We got to see the end of the Golden State Warriors run. I mean, honestly, thank God. I don't think I could have done another week of Golden State Warriors talk.
Look at that. Golden State Warriors free agency begins for them sooner than maybe what they expected here. Not even get any home playoff games, quite frankly, not even technically making the playoffs. So away we go, the 7-7, the hottest topics in sports. And I'm going to start this by saying, RBIs, baby. That's the way to do it. Jock Peterson, best bet on the show yesterday. Cha-ching! Multiple RBIs yesterday for him. We'll get to those plays a little bit later in the show, but let's get to those topics. That includes the Sacramento Kings, 118, the Golden State Warriors, 94. I sat on the show yesterday, Davis, and told the people, you know what? I like both of these road teams, and I think I like the Golden State Warriors even more than the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, the game starts, tip-off time after 10 o'clock, wasn't able to watch it, woke up, saw some of the highlights. My goodness, the Kings put away the Warriors last night, Davis.
They did, and look, I was on the Golden State Warriors side. I suppose if you told me going into this game that Klay Thompson was literally going to go 0 for 10 from the floor, I probably would have been on the Kings. And I did say this to Pharrell yesterday, the Keon Ellis, Davion Mitchell on Curry and Klay, that was going to matter. And look, in the end, it definitely did matter. Those guys were clearly perturbed by the presence of those two young defenders.
Crazy, crazy times here as we welcome in the radio audience. You're watching and listening live to the Early Line, a Wednesday morning edition right here on the SportsGrid Network, Sirius XM Channel 159. Donnie Rightside, Davis Maddock. We got you for the next 3 hours going over the hottest topics in sports, which quite frankly last night was the NBA playoffs. That included the Los Angeles Lakers going on the road in the play-in series and knocking out the New Orleans Pelicans here to that, one more loss and we're done for the season. 110-106. LeBron James was the star last night. 23 points, 9 rebounds, and 9 assists. But the Pelicans, what a topsy-turvy game all the way through. The shame of this was an injury to Zion Williamson, who was dominating that basketball game. We'll get to it later, puts maybe his playoff status in peril as well. But a great win for the Lakers as they move on into the playoffs, and they will face the Denver Nuggets.
And this is what the Lakers told us was going to happen the entire season. They were going to get to the play-in. They were going to get to the 6th seed wherever they got, and they were going to win those games. I think the Lakers now view themselves as the Western Conference Miami Heat, where the regular season doesn't matter. They get into a playoff series versus anyone, and they think they can win it. And you know what, Donnie? They might be right. They really might be right.
Yeah, they were getting some clutch outside shooting early in that game. It was fun to watch. And the pace in that one from the first quarter, like, wow, this is going to go way over the total. It doesn't go anywhere near the totals. It start to slow down in that second and third quarter, particularly on the scoring sides. You had 16 points from the New Orleans in the second quarter and only 23 points for the Los Angeles Lakers. But the Lakers win and move on. We'll see what happens in the New Orleans Pelicans in their quote-unquote next round. I'll tell you what's happening in this round here. The Atlanta Braves at the plate, yeah, they hit, and they hit some more. Didn't look like they were going to get their team total until the 9th inning, where they plated 4 runs in a 6-2 victory over the Houston Astros. That puts the Braves at 11-5 on the season. And how about this? The Houston Astros dropped to 6-13, Davis.
You know, I'm not worried about the Houston Astros at all. 6-13, whatever. They're going to end up getting their wild card spot. They're going to make 2 moves at the trade deadline. You know, I think, sadly, they're going to replace Jose Abreu at some point here. They'll come up with a phantom IL stint for him. They'll find a guy at first base /DH who can actually hit. They will add another starting pitcher. They're going to end up, winning 88 games, something like that. Maybe they don't go over their preseason win total, but way too early in the season, I think, to worry about an organization that has been so historically dominant the way they have.
Top 5 players in their lineup last night for the Braves, no RBI. But how about the bottom of the lineup? Arcia, 2 RBIs. Guillorme, 2 RBIs. Trump, 2 RBIs. And that was enough to get the job done yesterday as they move past. And Hunter Brown bounces back in a performance, 6 innings and only 2 earned runs given up, which was way better than his 2/3 of an inning. I'm going to give up about 100 runs against the Kansas City Royals. But I'm with you here. I think there is some value for the rest of the season here on the Houston Astros. Let's go over to the ice. And the Capitals took a 2-1 victory in Philadelphia Philadelphia, which was a very interesting one, which clinched a playoff spot for the Capitals. In a 1-1 tie late in that game, the Philadelphia Flyers were scoreboard watching and figured they're getting the breaks in the Montreal Canadiens-Detroit Red Wings game, only to find out with 3 seconds to go, the Red Wings tie that game up and send it to overtime, which basically knocked the Philadelphia Flyers out. They still pull the goalie, which gave the Capitals the victory with an easy empty net goal, and away the Capitals go into the playoffs now. Crazy night in the NHL, Davis.
It is. I mean, the entire last week of the NHL season has been pretty nuts. We've had some emotional Detroit Red Wings victories. I actually went to a game the other night. I went to Blues Hurricanes the other night. The Blues had to win out the remainder of their games and get results for the Vegas Golden Knights to go their way. And then the Blues gave up 4 goals in the third period to the Carolina Hurricanes, and their season ended. But we're about to playoff hockey, one of the greatest experiences in sports.
Nah, it's great, especially when your team gets to participate in those sports. And the Philadelphia Flyers, third straight year without the playoffs here. And the last time they did make the playoffs was in the COVID season. So they didn't even get any de facto home games at that point. Been a long time in Philadelphia since we had the orange out in the stadium where you're saying, okay, let's go Flyers. Maybe next year, that's all we can hope forward to. How about this? Maybe next year for Blake Griffin? Nope, not next year. Announces his retirement from the NBA after 14 years. A lot of electric dunks in those 14 years for Blake Griffin with a solid career.
An amazing career. I mean, I've known Blake Griffin for a long time. He played AAU basketball in Oklahoma. I've been very aware of him. I love Blake Griffin. I'm very sad to see him go. And I think, sadly, Blake Griffin was just such a victim of the game changing. If he had come around 5 years later, he would have learned how to shoot 3-pointers, as a teenager. And it would have been a very different experience, I think, for Blake Griffin.
Yeah, a lot of good dunks there. And also one of those Clippers teams that we thought might ascend into a heavy playoff spot with a playoff run just never happened for them here. We'll see what happens with the Clippers this year. But in the college basketball game, the transfer portal is open. Omar Ballo, top player in the transfer portal, picks Indiana, goes from Arizona to Indiana every single day. You got to keep your eyes and ears open in college basketball and football to see where some of these kids are going, Davis.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy for a player who was as good as Balla was for Arizona to enter the transfer portal. So I guess that's just the way college basketball goes now.
All about money, I guess, at this point. You're right about that. Like, he wasn't like, hey, I was getting underutilized in Arizona. He was a 2-time Pac-12 all-conference player. It's like, hey, you know what? I'll find some time in Indiana, which means my bank account got filled up a little bit more, which shout out to the kids who can earn that type of money, transfer to schools, put a little bit more spread in their pocket. That works out. Talking about spread in their pocket, that's the WNBA players right now, Davis. And what we're talking about is $76,000 per year, which is what we're going to see the number 1 overall pick make this year in Caitlin Clark. But how about this? Record viewership here for the draft itself. 2.45 million viewers tuned in. And quite frankly, that was the best WNBA rated anything since the year 2000. It was the draft, and we knew who was going number 1 overall. Make sure you stay tuned right here to the early line on the SportsGrid Network. We're talking NBA playoffs next.
People that bashed him will be eating their words this year.
Pretty heavily favored to be a first-round pick, minus 400 earlier this week. But that's not the surprise.
If you're drafting J.J. McCarthy in the first half of the first round, you clearly believe not only is he a starter, he's going to be your starter for years to come. But
a popular bet was under 3.5 wide receivers in the first round.
The tape doesn't lie, baby.
Only on SportsGrid.
Victor Hovland right now can probably hit it right where he's looking on the range. But the problem is when you get out to a golf course, especially like Augusta National, it's a big, big picture. You can see every shot in the world, but the targets are really, really small.
I feel like whoever we pick is going to win. Like, I feel like we have the power to choose the winner of this tournament.
I know. I'm surprised more guys haven't reached out.
And they might, and they probably will.
Only on SportsGrid.
89-87, 0.6 seconds remaining. Big drama here in this game. Always frustrating when your Final Four parlay and bracket gets busted, but here we go. I'm done.
Look what he is now. He's on FanDuel, plus 120. Almost even money to win the tournament. So you actually, if you did get him at plus 260,
you got a pretty good, better investment than you had before. Just saying.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Hour number one rolling along right here on the early line on a Wednesday morning edition. Donnie right side along with Davis Maddock. And we're going to talk some NBA hoops here because teams are going home. Teams are trying to advance. It is going to be a crazy run to an NBA championship. And it started yesterday with a doubleheader. We're going to get to the second game here of that doubleheader first. And that was the Sacramento Kings 118, Golden State Warriors 94. When we were doing the show yesterday, myself and Ben here, Davis, it was a minus 2 point spread. I said to myself, I trust the Rings over the Kings in this game, which means, yes, Sacramento is talented. Yes, they are at home. It's going to be a great atmosphere, but I figured the Golden State Warriors just built for this atmosphere more than the Sacramento Kings. The veteran leadership, they're going to steady the pace. The heart rate won't get too high because they're used to these type of scenarios, only to find out that the Kings absolutely pounded the Golden State Warriors. So let's start there. What was the expectations for you, Davis? For me, I thought this was a Warriors game. Maybe if they lost, it would be close. They got absolutely hammered yesterday by the Kings.
I mean, I really thought this was your classic, battle-tested playoff veterans, Curry, Clay, Draymond. They've all been there, done that. Looney starting center on a championship team. Now, they do have a lot of young guys in there, Pajemski and Moody and Kuminga. Those guys really weren't the problem. If you watch the game, if you look at the box score, the young guys actually all pretty much did their job. I mean, it's just very hard to see what's happened to Klay Thompson, I guess, from someone who has been, witness to so many great moments from him. But he really, he's a losing NBA player right now. He is not nearly as strong on the defensive end as he used to be. Pretty much was. I actually think at their absolute peaks, Klay was an even crazier warper of defenses because he didn't need to dribble. He didn't need to look at the basket. He would come off that elevator, pin down, and it was just like an automatic 3 points. There was nothing you could do. And when Klay's out there playing 31 minutes and can't hit the broadside of a barn, well, you're basically playing 3-on-5 on offense because the Warriors are always playing a non-shooter right now, whether it be Trace Jackson-Davis, Kevon Looney, or Draymond Green. And it just basically meant that Steph Curry had no room to breathe. They were trapping him. They were doubling him. And I suppose if you had told me that Klay was going to have one of his worst games of the season, I would have been all over the Kings. I just didn't really think that was particularly likely.
Yeah, 94 points out of the Warriors. And you're right about this. The handicap scenario for me yesterday was, again, just trusting the Warriors, even though it was a heavy public favorite. So, you know what? Let me remove that for the conversation here. Let's just see how these two teams are going to match up. And then when you take a look at some of those prop bets, right? You're looking at Draymond Green possibly scores 12 points in that game. Okay, Steph Curry only gets 22, but I was with you. It was one of those where I was really focusing on Klay Thompson, not because we thought he would dominate and he's the best player on the team, but your main focus is always Steph Curry, which means you're going to get left open for some wide open shots. It's just up to you to knock those down. 32 minutes for Klay Thompson, basically just doing cardio out there last night. 0 for 10 from the field, 0 for 6 from three-point range, doesn't get to the free throw line, finishes with 0 points here. And then we take a look at that experiment here that started at the beginning of the season, Davis. Hey, how's Chris Paul going to fit into this team? Well, he plays 18 minutes in a playoff game, minus 15, and comes away with 3 points just on 1 3-point shot made. It was a bad effort all the way around for the Golden State Warriors. But also, if we're taking a look at the Sacramento Kings, guys were stepping up. Murray, 11 of 25 from the floor, which included 24 points. But if you take a look at the starting lineup for the Sacramento Kings, Sabonis plus 25, Barnes plus 29, Murray plus 20, Fox plus 20, Ellis plus 27. The starting lineup absolutely dominated last night for the Sacramento Kings.
They did. I mean, I think the biggest surprise here has got to be the Keegan Murray absolute explosion. I suppose that what ended up happening was that they decided that Trayce Jackson-Davis couldn't play in this game. They stuck Kuminga in. They played a lot of 3-guard lineups with Klay, Curry, Podziemski, or subbing in Chris Paul in those lineups. The thing I found most surprising was the limited minutes for Paul. I thought this was a pretty good spot for him because, Keon Ellis played 39 minutes. He only took 8 shots in this game. I mean, how many dribbles went along with those 8 shots? Like, Keon Ellis was not a guy that you had to limit at the point of attack. So I thought that basically provided a spot on defense for the 38-year-old Chris Paul. Like, not that he's a bad defensive player, but he's 38 years old. He just is probably not going to be able to play A-level defense for 30 minutes in a playoff game. If I was Steve Kerr, my plan for this game would have been, I maybe even would have started Chris Paul and Steph Curry together in the backcourt just to give me some more ball handling and to give me some calm and some composure. Because something that's been a problem for the Warriors as long as this iteration of the team has existed has been the turnovers. I mean, even when they were, winning 73 games, when they were going through the playoffs undefeated, they really struggled with the turnovers. Curry turned the ball over 3 times in this game. Draymond turned the ball over 3 times. They had 16 turnovers as a team compared to only 8 turnovers for the Kings. And I mean, that's pretty much the story of the game was everyone on the Kings did their job. Keegan Murray was awesome in this game. He took 13 3-pointers from your power forward in a playoff game. He made 8 of them. There was just nothing. I suppose Draymond just was not comfortable going all the way out on the perimeter against Keegan Murray, and it absolutely murdered them.
It's wild to take a look at because a team that's used to making more 3-point shots than the other team is the Golden State Warriors. 31% from 3-point range, the Warriors were 10 of 32. You flip it over to the Kings. Now, we always know you typically shoot better at home. 46% from 3-point range, 18 of 39. And just looking at the starting lineup, Barnes made 3 of 4. Murray, 8 of 13. Fox was 2 for 8. And then Ellis was 3 of 4. But keep in mind, too, this wasn't one of those boat races at the beginning of the game. It was a 9-point game at the end of the first quarter, but the Golden State Warriors actually won the second quarter by 5 points. So we're looking at a close game at the half, coming out of it 37 points on the home court for the Kings, followed by 27. Just not enough in the tank for the Golden State Warriors. And this is what happens when you have a 1-game playoff. Winner moves on, loser goes home. If you don't bring your A game, which certainly the Warriors didn't, they got knocked out quickly here, and the Kings will move on. So let's take a look at what the Golden State Warriors have done over the past couple years. 2020, missed the playoffs. 2021, lost in the play-in tournament. 2022, NBA champions. 2023, lost in round number 2, and 2024 lost in the play-in tournament. The future of the Golden State Warriors is what for you right now, Davis?
I mean, they have some tough questions to ask of themselves. They have the most expensive roster in NBA history. They have multiple of their, great players whose contracts are going to be, they're going to be done soon. Klay Thompson's contract expires. They have Chris Paul, who is non-guaranteed for next year, which means that they can get rid of him. So they can shave, that's about $80 million off of their books right there. They're also going to have to make a decision on Draymond Green, who they did sign to a contract extension, but I actually think he's on a cap number that they could move if they attached a draft pick. He makes $24 million, and they have the bones. So you go with Curry, you go with Kuminga, you go with Moses Moody, you go with Podziemski, and that's kind of your starting lineup for next season. I don't think there's any chance that's actually what they do. I think they end up probably retaining Klay Thompson on a relatively team-friendly contract, particularly after how bad he was in this game. Like, if you just look out in the market, who's given Klay Thompson $37 million a year. Are the Pistons going to do it? Or who he actually, even in this state of being, would actually be a great Orlando Magic player because they have the defense to absorb his shortcomings on that end. And they just the Magic are just begging for some air on offense. It's sad to see that this is going to kind of be the end of Curry's career. It's definitely, this is not the 98 Bulls, right? They just are not good because the Western Conference also is just so good. I mean, the Oklahoma City Thunder kind of coming out of nowhere to be the 1 seed. I would imagine that probably was not in their projections as an organization that they would have to deal with that. The Timberwolves with their Twin Towers, that's all working out. I think the future is probably we see the same exact guys run it back next year. They're, again, the most expensive team in the NBA. They probably win 47 games. Is 47 games going to be enough? Chris Paul won't be back. They're not going to renew his contract, so it'll be more Podziemski and more Moses Moody next year.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy the way it's going to work out because at the beginning of the season, we do a pick six on some of the futures wagers. My team total under was the Golden State Warriors, and they barely stayed under that, but a lot more question marks on the future because the one thing we do know is they have a good ownership group out there. They'll pay into the luxury tax, but they want to return on that investment, which means, hey, at least get us a couple home playoff games, which the Warriors weren't able to provide. A mile-high win by the Lakers. Let's review that next, right here on the SportsGrid Network.
People that bashed him will be eating their words this year.
Pretty heavily favored to be a first-round pick, minus 400 earlier this week. But that's not the surprise.
If you're drafting J.J. McCarthy in the first half of the first round, you clearly believe not only is his starter, he's going to be your starter for years to come. But
a popular bet was under 3.5 wide receivers in the first round.
The tape doesn't lie, baby.
Only on SportsGrid.
Victor Hoffman right now can probably hit it right where he's looking on the range. But the problem is when you get out to a golf course, especially like Augusta National, it's a big, big picture. You can see every shot in the world, but the targets are really, really small.
I feel like whoever we pick is going to win. I feel like we have the power to choose the winner of this tournament.
I know. I'm surprised more guys haven't reached out.
And they might, and they probably will.
Only on SportsGrid.
89-87, 0.6 seconds remaining. Big drama here in this game. Always frustrating when your Final Four parlay and bracket gets busted, but here we go. I'm done.
Look what he is now. He's on FanDuel, plus 120. Almost even money to win the tournament. So you actually, if you did get him at plus 260, you got a pretty good, better investment than you had before. Just saying.
Sports Rage Late Night. Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Right back at it here on the Early Line Wednesday morning edition, Sirius XM Channel 159 Sports Grid Network. Davis and Donnie here having some fun talking NBA action. And game number one of the doubleheader last night took place in New Orleans. That was the Los Angeles Lakers, depending on where you're shopping at yesterday. -1s on your side, +1s on your side, going back and forth all day. The Lakers, obviously a heavy public favorite in the betting markets, and they won the game. 110-106. Strong first quarter by New Orleans, 34-26 over the Lakers, but the Lakers quickly flipped that script, Davis, in the second quarter by winning that 34-16, and away the Lakers went. It got really close into the late fourth quarter stages here, but the Lakers were able to hold on and punch their ticket as the 7th seed, and the New Orleans Pelicans now looking to play another game at home, maybe without a superstar player, but we'll get to that in just a little bit. Talk to us about the game last night, your feelings heading into the Lakers-Pelicans. For me, I thought the Lakers would be able to win this one, similar to what I thought about the Golden State Warriors, but the Lakers were able to handle their business.
Yeah, I mean, look, I felt pretty much the same way. The Lakers dominated the Pelicans in the regular season, and there's some pretty clear reasons why. The Pelicans, I don't know what their coaching staff is doing with Jonas Valanciunas, but they refuse to play him. And I mean, I think in general, going away from a big, ground-bound center like Valanciunas makes sense in a lot of matchups. And the perfect lineup for the Pelicans over the long term would be for Zion to be good enough defensively to play at center. If we had prime athletic Duke Zion Williamson, yeah, you'd play that lineup. The issue has been that Zion has had to stay a power forward in the NBA because he just is not good enough defensively as a center. He can't protect the rim. He can't move laterally quick enough. He's still an incredible offensive player. We see that last night. He goes 40 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists, but he can't do the Giannis. He can't do the Draymond Green and anchor your defense and still be a productive offensive player. Maybe if he dedicated all of his energies in the offseason to losing 15 pounds and becoming this incredible defensive player, the Pelicans could get to where they want to go. But as it stands right now, they always have to be playing one of Jonas Valanciunas or Larry Nance, which hurts them on offense, obviously, because you're playing a guy who can't shoot and won't shoot and who teams won't respect as a shooter, which means the Lakers just absolutely punish them inside. LeBron was awesome in this game, got to the free throw line 5 different times. Anthony Davis in the non-Valanciunas minutes, they can't rebound at all. So, of course, Anthony Davis ends up with 15 rebounds, and you got to hand it to him. I mean, the oft-maligned D'Angelo Russell, 7 for 14 from the floor, only 1 turnover, 6 assists. He was a team high plus 16 in this game. Everyone loves to laugh at D'Angelo Russell. He's had such a weird career. The whole incident with Nick Young, he gets traded. He's part of the Kevin Durant trade for the goal. Like, he's just had a very bizarre career. But they definitely, I will say this, 0.0% chance can the Lakers win a playoff series without D'Angelo Russell playing near the top of his game, because he is their best ball handler other than LeBron.
And he was really good early in that game, too. A couple clutch three-point shots to sort of get the Lakers back into the game with some momentum. You saw him drawn with the crowd, really engaged into that environment, and he ends up with 21 points overall. So let's focus on the Los Angeles Lakers and that starting lineup. They got balance all the way across. Davis with 20 points. Rui Hachimura, 13 points. LeBron James, 23. You see D'Angelo Russell with 21 and Austin Reeves with 16 points. So many times you win the three-point line, you win the basketball game, and the Lakers went 14 of 35 from three-point range, 40% they'll take that as a team, because quite frankly, only 41% as a team from the floor if we combine 2 points and also three-point shooting. Now I'm going to beef with LeBron James, who was very good last night. 23 points, 9 rebounds, going along with 9 assists. Almost a triple-double in a road playoff game. That's pretty impressive. But I like Tim Davis over 43.5 points, rebounds, and assists. So I always like to do this post-game. If you would have told me, Davis, he's going to get 9 rebounds, 9 assists, go to the free throw line 10 times, make all 10 free throws, and then you tell me he's going to have 20 shot attempts from the floor, how does he not cross over that? Well, he didn't last night because he was 6 of 20 from the field. But the Lakers do advance. Very good analysis here. You get some time to rest up for that Denver series. But before we get there, let's focus on the Pelicans here and what happened with their game yesterday. Was it so simple, Davis, that you look at Zion Williamson, who was absolutely filthy in this game? 17 of 27, 40 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists, gets injured in this game, which is so like Zion. If Zion plays the full game here, do the Pelicans win this one? We'll never know, but what was your feeling on that?
I mean, I think probably not, because the thing is, Zion has nowhere to go on defense against the Lakers. He is not. It feels crazy to say, but 39-year-old LeBron James, the literal oldest player in the NBA, is too strong for him. Like, LeBron will try and put Zion in the action. He'll get the ball and he will, he'll motion to whoever he needs to get Zion in the action. And if you have Nance in there, then you don't really have rim protection, right? So then it ends up being a pick and roll with Anthony Davis. If you have Jonas Valanciunas in there, I mean, look, if you want Joe Val meeting LeBron at the rim, you pretty much, it's going to be a foul or it's going to be a bucket. So I mean, the best defensive lineup that the Lakers have does not include Zion Williamson. And I do want to give a shout out to Herb Jones, who, like, that guy left it all on the floor. He was ball denying LeBron James, from full court, 96 feet from the time that the whistle blew. Can you imagine how exhausting and how intimidating that's got to be? Like, was Herb Jones even born when LeBron James got drafted by the Cleveland Cavaliers? Like, he literally may not have been. I think Herb, by the way, he shot, I believe, 39% from 3-point range this year. The Pelicans' future is so bright as a team if Zion can get in, like, the absolute peak physical shape, right? If Zion becomes a B-plus defensive player, a guy who you can play at center 15 minutes a night, I mean, I would say the Pelicans have just as high of a ceiling as the Oklahoma City Thunder, as the Minnesota Timberwolves, because these guys are so good. Now, I do think they probably will have to move on from CJ McCollum. Like, it's just very hard to have an above-average defense when you have, like, what, maybe is CJ McCollum the smallest player in the NBA? He might actually be, but I don't think Zion staying. I mean, Zion played 36 minutes. Like, if he goes to 40 minutes, do they win this game? I don't think so. And because that's the other thing, is you got to bet against LeBron at the end of a game, and I'll never do that. I mean, LeBron is. I am not old enough to have watched Michael Jordan play NBA games, so LeBron is the best basketball player I've ever seen in my life.
He hit a clutch jumper late in that game, too, with a man in his face, which shows you, like, he's there. And certainly you want to be able to hold on with LeBron James at the end. But quite frankly, you look at Zion, 40 points in that game. He was absolutely tremendous. Got absolutely no help, Davis, from that starting lineup here. Ingram, 11 points. Jones, 10 points. Valanciunas, 4 points. McCollum, 9 points. And also, I always like to play that box score game. Tell me before the game that Zion's going to drop 40, and you're going to have 3 guys come off the bench for the Pelicans to score double digits. Nance Jr., 10 points. Alvarado, 10 points. Trey Murphy, 12 points here. That should have been good enough for a victory here. Now, as we look forward, there are news and notes coming out of this game where, yes, Zion was an absolute beast, but quite frankly, I don't think we see Zion again in this playoff run, which could only mean one more game here as they line up against the Sacramento Kings. The reports coming out that it's a hamstring injury for an explosive player. That's not something you could shake off here. So talk to me, Davis, about the New Orleans Pelicans now probably not playing with Zion in the next round of the play-in tournament here, the play-in round. What's going to happen with the Pelicans?
I mean, it's a pretty bad spot for them against the Kings, who can score 120 against anyone. The one thing I would say, Matt Moore from the Action Network tweeted this, which is, like, you just absolutely have to play Trey Murphy in these games. There can't be any politics. You can't be worried about hurting Brandon Ingram's feelings. You can't be worried about hurting CJ McCollum's feelings. Trey Murphy is the second best offensive player on the New Orleans Pelicans. He played 31 minutes in this game. I actually think the adjustment you make against the Kings is, I guess if you don't have Zion, you start Jonas Valanciunas and Larry Nance together. I would consider bringing Brandon Ingram off the bench. There's no chance they do that, right? I mean, Brandon Ingram is their highest paid player. He is their second franchise player after Zion Williamson. Like, they just won't do that. I definitely think they should. I mean, they're not going to win against the Kings without Zion. They're drawing 100% completely stone dead. They don't have the horses. The Kings are too good on offense. And I mean, look, we literally just saw it. The Keon Ellis factor is insane. I mean, Keon Ellis is basically as good of a defender as Herb Jones is. He's a little bit smaller, so you can't stick him out on a 6'8" wing and get the same results. But in a very blessing in disguise way, losing Monk and Herter for the Kings totally backdoored them into this guy who was, like, not even in their rotation, like, winning them a road play-in game or winning them a home play-in game.
Quick preview here. Friday night, 9:30 p.m., Kings and the Pelicans. The Pelicans will be the home team here. Overnight line was a -2.5. That's now dropped at the FanDuel Sportsbook to a -1.5. And if anybody knows anything about hamstring injuries, the fact that Zion did not return to that game last night, he is not going to play Friday night. You can bookmark that right now at this point. So looking at that game Friday night, it's still a home game here for the Pelicans. They'll still be energized, but that's got to be demoralizing. So looking at that number, -1.5 and a total of 218, your thoughts, Davis, would be, you know what? It's Sacramento or nobody here?
Yeah, I mean, there's no one on the Pelicans roster who I think can get in the way of what the Kings like to do on offense, which is you give the ball to Domantas Sabonis on the elbow, dribble handoffs. Sabonis is such an underrated player because he's so bad on defense and he's a big man. I mean, it's not dissimilar from what we used to say about Nikola Jokic, 5-6 years ago. It's like, sure, it's great. He can do all this stuff and he's so fun, but he's just a turnstile on the other end. Jokic got better on defense. Sabonis never has. But who's punishing him here? What is Larry Nance going to put Domas in the basket? I don't think so.
How about that? The NBA playoffs underway. Another doubleheader tonight, which we'll get to a little bit later in the show. Sixers, Heat, Hawks, and Bulls. But it's time to get on the diamond and recap what happened last night right here on the early line.
People that bashed him will be eating their words this year.
Pretty heavily favored to be a first-round pick, -400 earlier this week. But that's not the surprise.
If you're drafting J.J. McCarthy in the first half of the first round, you clearly believe not only is he a starter, he's going to be your starter for years to come. But
a popular bet was under 3.5 wide receivers in the first round.
The tape doesn't lie, baby.
Only on SportsGrid.
Victor Hovland right now can probably hit it right where he's looking on the range. But the problem is when you get out to a golf course, especially like Augusta National, it's a big, big picture. You can see every shot in the world, but the targets are really, really small.
I feel like whoever we pick is going to win. I feel like we have the power to choose the winner of this tournament.
I know. I'm surprised more guys haven't reached out.
And they might, and they probably will.
Only on SportsGrid.
89-87, 0.6 seconds remaining. Big drama here in this game. Always frustrating when your Final Four parlay and bracket gets busted, but here we go. I'm done.
Look what he is now. He's on FanDuel, +120. Almost even money to win the tournament. So you actually, if you did get him at +260, you got a pretty good, better investment than you had before. Just saying.
Sports Rage Late Night. Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Catching up on the diamond today, right here, right now on the early line. It's Donnie and Davis here. And before we get there, by the way, Wednesdays sometimes are fantastic. Not because you get to watch the early line and check in with the SportsGrid Network all day long. Major League Baseball, look at that card today. Almost a dozen games, I believe, starting before the 4 o'clock Eastern hour. So sensational stuff right off the gate. We'll get to that a little bit later in the show. But let's hit some recaps here, Davis, on what happened last night. The one thing that you can pretty much write down in stone right now and chisel away is the Atlanta Braves are going to score 5 runs every single night. So you can just set your clock to that. They win 6-2 yesterday with an explosion in the 9th inning of 4 runs to separate themselves away from the Astros. 11 more hits for the Braves, but the question marks come up here. The Braves are 11-5. They're not getting the greatest pitching. But how about Ronaldo Lopez? Used to be on my fade meter for a couple years here. Now 2-0 in the season with an ERA of a half of a run. On the other side of the equation, for the Astros, not starting off very good this year, to say the least here. That is 6-13 on the season, 4-8 at home. Hunter Brown is supposed to be that guy that's going to lead them into the next millennium as their pitcher. He actually improved his ERA yesterday, even though he's 0-3 now with a 10.54. The Astros, we talked about it from before. I'm actually still a buyer on them because you're right, Davis. When all said and done, in August and September, they're at least going to be battling for that wild card. And if they get into the playoffs, this team knows how to win. I like what the Braves are doing. They'll make moves for another pitcher or two. But talk to me about the Astros. Another loss, 6-13. Not good vibes down there in H-Town.
No, not good vibes, but I mean, come on. We've had enough experience with this team, and they just have a bunch of good hitters who are not hitting. Something they absolutely have to do is they got to figure out a solution to this Jose Abreu thing. He was so brutal for them last season. He did finally get it together a little bit in the back half. Right now, Jose Abreu has 4 hits through 15 games, 54 plate appearances. He's got a negative 25 OPS plus, but he's not the only issue that they've got. Bregman is below league average. McCormick is below league average. Really, their only guy who is excelling right now is Jose Altuve. Some of their bench hitters have been all right. Victor Caratini, when he has to play, whatever, he's fine. Their pitching performances have also been very strange in the sense that they're getting them from very weird places. Ronel Blanco basically never allows a hit. He's only allowed 6 hits in his 3 starts. JP France and Hunter Brown have been terrible. Again, I think this is like the number one team that is going to act early at when it comes to trading for a starting pitcher. Actually, retroactively, I'm pretty surprised that Dylan Cease is not a Houston Astro, given how low the price was to get him. I suppose that the Astros didn't know that this is what they were going to be getting, and they thought that they'd be getting Justin Verlander back sooner rather than later. They definitely are, absolutely begging for JV to get back in the rotation right now. But my worry meter on the Astros is like, I don't know, a 2 right now. Like if they still have a losing record in a month, they have no solution to the Abreu thing. Bregman and McCormick are still not hitting. Sure. But I mean, they have Yadier Diaz, one of the better hitting catchers in baseball. Altuve, basically the best hitting second baseman. Pena has started to regain the form that he had when he was Rookie of the Year. Kyle Tucker has been very good. Jordan Alvarez. I mean, I guess we have to prepare for Alvarez to miss the month that he always misses with this knee injury. That just seems to be chronic at this point. But I'm not worried about the Houston Astros.
Yeah, if anything, you take a look at it and say, if you still like the Astros, you're getting a much better price than what you had on them opening day when they were in the lead, or should I say the lead dog at the FanDuel Sportsbook here to win the pennant in the American League, and certainly one of the favorites to win the World Series. We'll see how it plays out. But again, you are getting a discount on them now. How about this? The New York Mets, over 500 now, 9-8 on the season with a 3-1 victory over the Pittsburgh Pirates. That drops them to 11-7. It's really with the battle of the bullpens, because you got some pretty good starting pitching yesterday. Jose Quintana, the crafty lefty for the Mets, goes 5 innings, gives up 1 earned run. And how about Jones for the Pirates? 5 innings pitched, 1 hit, and no earned runs here. The Mets plate 3 runs in the 7th inning to walk away with the victory. And also, we're talking about players that aren't hitting yet. Francisco Lindor coming to the Mets as a free agent, getting that monster contract, hasn't really lived up to the hype. He's now hitting 145 on the early season, but yet the Mets a game over 500 here.
They are, and I mean, look, Jared Jones was he was taken out in that game yesterday with 59 pitches thrown after throwing 85 pitches in all of his other starts. So I think had they extended him a little bit further, it probably would have ended up a little bit differently. The Pirates are one of the more interesting teams here in the early season. They are 11-7. They were not able to get over the hump against the New York Metropolitans, but I like their lineup, and some of their young guys are not even really hitting yet. Henry Davis, this young catcher, has not got going. Jared Triolo is not 100% got going. Brian Hayes looks a little bit more like he did when he was up there for National League Rookie of the Year. Connor Joe has been good. We got Andrew McCutchen with his milestone home run. I think Jack Sawinski probably deserves to play every day for this team. And I don't know what it is about this Pirates pitching staff, but they always get these old guys, Marco Gonzalez, Martin Perez. They come in, they find a way to get a bunch of, 2-run starts out of them. And look, I know everyone here at SportsGrid is rooting on their New York Metropolitans. They're a fine baseball team. I don't think they're a serious contender. They're definitely not a serious contender to win that division. They're third best team in the division. It is what it is. I'm not worried about Lindor, though. Lindor has already had an extended slump as a New York Metropolitan, and he figured it out. It's just very hard, right? Baseball is just a very, very hard sport. Sometimes great players go on these runs.
Exactly. You get those off seasons there. You try to work on some things. You go to spring training. It's warm weather, and all of a sudden you pop up in the metropolitan area up there in New York, and it's 40 degrees every single day, and you just can't get your swing together. Hopefully sooner than later, Lindor comes out of that, because certainly hitting below the Mendoza line, not what they anticipated here. Talking about contenders possibly in the NL. How about the Arizona Diamondbacks after a sluggish start now, 500 after a slugfest yesterday, 12-11 victory over the Chicago Cubs. My best bet here on the early line was an RBI to be plated by Jock Peterson, who hit a home run and plated 2 RBI yesterday. It was look at it, out of the end of the 5th inning, which they scored 8 total runs in that inning, you see the Cubs score 6 times in the top of the 6th inning. So you say, hold on now. We got 11 runs by the 7th inning, and we get shut out in innings 8, 9, and 10 in extras. And you had 1 run apiece there for the Arizona Diamondbacks in 7, 8, 9, and then inning number 10. Impressive performance at the plate here. 2 questionable pitchers coming into that game, and they lit the ballpark up out there in Arizona.
Yeah, I don't know what Tommy Henry has done to deserve a spot in a Major League Baseball rotation. Career 4.84 ERA. He doesn't strike anyone out. He walks 10% of the guys that he faces. So I think Tommy Henry is a great indicator whenever he goes. You might want to be betting the over team total for the opposing team. And Kyle Hendricks, kind of the same deal. He's just a guy that has been so figured out by Major League Baseball hitters. Home run for Ian Happ, kind of like Ian Happ as a utility guy. Wonder what the direction of the Cubs franchise is going to be. Are they if the Pirates are an 85 win team, there's not enough room for another solid team in that division. One of the Cardinals or the Cubs is going to have a disaster season, right? It'll probably be the Cardinals, given everything we know about that organization and the fact that they just don't instruct their pitchers to strike guys out. But I'm selling on the Cubs, and I was so against the Diamondbacks last year, but I'm reluctantly buying on this Diamondbacks team.
There you go. Bring those bats to the plate here. We'll see what happens. By the way, I was popping at the Trop yesterday also. How about this? Rays 7, Los Angeles Angels 6. The Angels now dropped to 8-9 on the season. Tampa Bay improves to 10-8. But if you would have told me before the game, hey, by the way, Savali's going to pitch 6 innings, 3 earned runs, and then Soriano's going to go 5 and only give up 1 earned, that seems like a typical game at the Trop that stays under the total. We'd have a little bit of electric here in extra innings, as this game went 13 innings where the Rays finally were able to best the Angels.
They were, and Savali has been a guy I've had trouble handling him as a Ray. I did the same thing with Eflin too when he came over. The Rays' ability to fix starting pitchers is just, it's wild. They can basically bring in any sort of, Jeremy Hellickson, 4.7 ERA guy, bring him in, and they end up becoming, incredible. One thing I have enjoyed about the Angels is that now that they are just terrible, now that they don't even have to pretend to be winning games, they are just giving full plate appearances to Joe Adell. I've been waiting for a 500 plate appearance Joe Adell season since I learned who Joe Adell was. I've actually got a bunch of his graded Bowman Chrome rookie cards. So if he goes on a run there, I'll be looking to offload those though. And no home run for Trout here. No solo home run for Mike Trout. So a little bit surprising in a game that the Angels score 6 runs.
Yeah, usually. Well, that's what Trout, like when they get beat 6-1, it's usually Trout gets the only solo home run there for the Angels. But that hot start, we'll talk a little MVP action a little bit later in the show, which maybe Mike Trout can put up some of those hollow numbers to get him into that equation. No hollow numbers yesterday in Toronto. 5-4 victory for the Blue Jays over the New York Yankees, who are slipping a little bit from that hot start, now coming in at 12-6 on the season as the Blue Jays improve to 10-8. It was a 5-1 lead here for the Blue Jays as they hung on with a late comeback here from the New York Yankees. But the questions are going to be there. Volpe's been tremendous in the top of that lineup, hitting close to 350. Juan Soto, 324, gets on base like crazy here. Then you have Aaron Judge, 182 on the season, waiting for him to wake up yesterday. You take a look at Rodon, 4 innings pitched, 5 hits, 3 earned runs, just not good enough. But that's a solid victory for the Toronto Blue Jays yesterday in the 6th.
Yeah, look, I got this one wrong. I normally am a Kikuchi backer. I find him to be pretty fascinating. Maybe the only starting pitcher in Major League Baseball who can throw 5 pitches for strikes. There was just that great athletic profile on him that came out yesterday. I guess appropriate timing considering he pitched so well in this game, about how he shares bottles of $3,000 Japanese whiskey with his teammates after he wins one of his starts. But I actually bet on the Yankees in this game because I suppose really I was just buying a little bit of a resurgence in Carlos Rodon's form. Now the Blue Jays absolutely murder left-handed starting pitching. That's like kind of really just been one of their things in this iteration of the team. The Bichette, Vladimir Guerrero, George Springer version of them. They're much worse against right-handed starting pitching. But he had nothing in this game. Only 5 strikeouts in 4 innings. Gave up 5 hits. In general, I think Rodon just not being a total dumpster fire has been a huge plus for the New York Yankees.
Baby steps there with Rodon. Hey, maybe get to the 5th and the 6th innings and give up a little bit less runs here. We'll see. That's a big contract for the Yanks that they need him certainly to perform. But how about this? The Boston Red Sox, back in last place here in the AL East after losing a game in 11 innings to the Cleveland Guardians, 10-7. Now, my handicap yesterday in this game is I really like the Boston Red Sox lineup going up against Bybee. I thought the team total would work out well. Sometimes better to be lucky than good because Bybee was really good yesterday. 5 innings pitched, 1 earned run with all those lefties in the lineup. The damage came a little bit later, but we do see the Boston Red Sox out. 9-9 is not a bad record, which should not have you in last place in your division, but that division's so competitive. Boston back in the basement here, Davis.
The Red Sox stink. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it at all. Like, there are some teams with hot starts that I could maybe buy. I am not buying the Red Sox. They have one blue chip player on the entire roster, Rafael Devers. They have a bunch of guys in the lineup who are either young and you are imagining on, or guys who are just okay, right? Maybe I'll end up being wrong because Duran and Casas and Abreu and Hamilton all hit their ceilings in one season and they're all great. I don't think so. And even if that does happen, even if that does play out, their pitching, I mean, is it the worst in the American League? I think it might be. I think they might have the worst pitching staff in the American League.
Yeah, I think they want an audit up there in Boston saying, we give you guys so much support here, and you are supporting soccer teams as opposed to supporting your Boston Red Sox payroll right now. Tough scene up there as they're 9-9 back in last place. We're going to talk some ice hockey next. Tough scene for the Flyers, home for the holidays. We'll talk about that next.
People that bashed him will be eating their words this year.
Pretty heavily favored to be a first-round pick, minus 400 earlier this week. But that's not the surprise.
If you're drafting J.J. McCarthy in the first half of the first round, you clearly believe not only is he a starter, he's going to be your starter for years to come. But
a popular bet was under 3.5 wide receivers in the first round.
The tape doesn't lie, baby.
Only on SportsGrid.
Victor Hovland right now can probably hit it right where he's looking on the range. But the problem is when you get out to a golf course, especially like Augusta National, it's a big, big picture. You can see every shot in the world, but the targets are really, really small.
I feel like whoever we pick is going to win. I feel like we have the power to choose the winner of this tournament.
I know. I'm surprised more guys haven't reached out.
And they might, and they probably will.
Only on SportsGrid.
89-87, 0.6 seconds remaining. Big drama here in this game. Always frustrating when your Final Four parlay and bracket gets busted, but here we go. I'm done.
Look what he is now. He's on FanDuel, plus 120. Almost even money to win the tournament. So you actually, if you did get him at plus 260, you got a pretty good, better investment than you had before. Just saying.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Ovechkin is in the playoffs yet again. Missed out last year with the Capitals, but back in this year due to some craziness on the final game of the season between the Flyers and the Capitals yesterday, which ended with a 2-1 Capitals victory. But it wasn't so simple here. There were many tiebreakers that the Flyers were trying to take advantage of for a chance for them to make it into the playoffs, which included a must-win in regulation against the Capitals. The Red Wings were getting pounded once again by the Canadiens, but stormed all the way back and tied the game up with 3 seconds left to send that game into overtime, which de facto canceled the Flyers' season. But the Flyers, not knowing just yet that that goal had been scored late, were in a 1-1 tie with the Capitals, knowing if they had any chance for the playoffs, they had to win in regulation. A 1-1 game, the Flyers pulled the goalie. TJ Oshie, I believe, got the goal late in that game to lift the Capitals up 2-1. Tough scene for the Pittsburgh Penguins watching all that unfold, but a wild night in the Eastern Conference in hockey last night, Davis.
Yeah, I mean, look, the last day in basketball in the NBA was a pretty weird day with like teams that had absolutely no incentive, right? The Bulls Knicks overtime classic. Then we had Oklahoma City going up by, I think they got up as high as 45 points against the Mavericks, then pulling all their starters for the second half. So you get a little bit less of that weirdness in hockey, because I think because you actually can't play hockey at anything less than full speed, and just the way the rosters work. Like if you're out there just kind of lollygagging around playing hockey, you're going to get injured, which leads to weirdness like this, where you're out there and you're playing hard, but there's no real reason to play hard. Like it was such a weird thing. And the Capital season is so interesting. I believe that now Ovechkin is only 30 goals behind Gretzky for the all-time record, which is, I mean, that's pretty interesting, right? Like, are we going to remember Ovechkin as the greatest goal scorer of all time?
It is crazy because he's been around a long time. Same with Sidney Crosby here. Now, Ovechkin going to the playoffs, Crosby heading home here due to a wild night in the Eastern Conference here. Now, hour number 2 is coming up next year, and we're going to take a look at an injury issue for the Milwaukee Bucks. Is it a big issue? Is it a small issue? When is Giannis coming back? Find out next. We'll be right back.
smarter to be on SportsGrid.